Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator is the founding president of the Millennial Action Project, the largest nonpartisan organization activating millennial policymakers in Congress and state legislatures. His work has been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and CNN. Named the Millennial of the Year in 2014, and named one of the most influential leaders under 40 by Washington Life magazine. Please welcome Stephen Alacara.
Thank you. How are we feeling today? Are you ready for a debate between Dinesh and Cenk? All right. Well, we're going to have a good time tonight, that I can tell you. So I have the great pleasure of moderating this debate, and we're going to have a constructive conversation. Keyword, the operative word is constructive. But let's bring them out here. First, I want to introduce an award-winning filmmaker, an award-winning author. He has a new movie coming out called Hillary's America. Give it up for Dinesh D'Souza. All right, and to our left, the host and founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur.
Much love, guys.
We chatted a bit before backstage, and we're going to run through a range of topics, but, you know, I got to say something off the cuff here. Y'all had a bit of a spat on Twitter before this, and I just want to say what's been said here just to bring everyone up to speed. So Dinesh earlier said, "Watch me set up a boot shop in Cenk Uygur's rear and live this Sunday." And in response, Cenk said, "Wrong, I'll be bringing the TYT Army, and I know you've been in prison, but please stop obsessing about my ass." All right, now that we've...
Because in the video, he said that I was going to bring a knife to a gunfight. I brought you guys instead.
He's really going to need you.
All right.
It's nice to have fans.
All right, well, let's kick things off here. You know, one of the interesting things about both of your backgrounds is that you're actually both immigrants to this country. Dinesh, you immigrated here from India, our shared motherland, and Cenk, you immigrated here from Turkey. So maybe I'll kick it off to you first, Dinesh. Tell me more about the immigration story coming here to the United States and how that has shaped your views on politics and policy.
Well, I came to the United States at the age of 17 in the late 1970s. India, in that time, was a country that had been really governed by socialists since independence. And it was a country where there was almost no opportunity for young people. Everybody I knew was fleeing the country, was going away, going to sea, going to the Middle East, coming to America. And it was a country that was rife with political corruption, corruption that actually made its way into everyday life. So you couldn't actually go through the day without feeling dirty. You're always paying bribes. You're always doing things under the table. And to me, coming to America, I came just to see what it was like. I came as an exchange student on a one-year Rotary scholarship. But I realized when I got here that I had sort of moved from the margin of the world to the center. I realized that even though I had $500 in my pocket, I couldn't afford to eat at McDonald's. Even though I was, in a sense, by myself, my family stayed back in India, I realized that if I stayed in America, I could do things with my life that I would never be able to do if I stayed home. And it wasn't just that I would have economic opportunity. It is true that I looked around America and I noticed that in this country, even the ordinary guy has a really good life. I don't even mean the really smart guy or the really hardworking guy. I mean the not so smart guy and the lazy guy. Still has 2 cars and a nice house and indoor plumbing and central air and all kinds of amenities and 14 types of cheese. And so I realized that a country is judged by the kind of life it gives to the common man. The rich guy lives well anywhere. Rich people live very well in India. But what I was looking for is a country that offers that ladder of opportunity up which from a guy at the bottom could start to climb through industry and hard work, creativity. And I also was looking for a country where you could write the script of your own life. So today I'm doing things in media, in writing, speaking, making movies. There's no way I could do any of this in India. So to me, America is a country where you're in the driver's seat of your own future. And that, to me, is the reason why the American idea is so magnetic. We have an immigration problem because we pull people from all over the world. And I think that I'm representative of the aspirations of not only the hundreds of millions of people who've come over the centuries to America, from the Irish, the Italians, the Jews, but today, the Koreans, the West Indies, the Pakistanis, we come to this country for the same reason, and that is that America offers something unavailable in the rest of the world.
So you're right. Our stories start out very similar. I came to the country when I was 8. The reason I was able to do that is that my dad was a small olive farmer in southeastern Turkey, and he got a chance to get a free education. And it made all the difference. And so I was also a Republican when I was younger, and then I realized how the world actually works. And so what I want, where we began to diverge is, I saw that equality of opportunity that my dad had, and I loved it, and I saw that in America, and that's why we chose to be American. So me being an American is not an accident of birth. It's not, hey, I happen to be born in a particular state. No, we were born outside the country. I came here. I love this country. I want to defend the ideas and the ideals that it stands for. But for me, unlike the conservatives, it's not, hey, everything we've done is fantastic, including the wars and the colonialism and the slavery and the what we did to the Native Americans and all these things are wonderful because we did it. We're Americans. No, the idea is, hey, equality of opportunity, liberty, the American dream. This is what we love America for. Let's live up to those ideals. And so, I was a Republican, and then partly because I'm an economic conservative and I believe in balancing budgets, but then in my entire lifetime, the Republicans never balanced the budget. Never. And so I was a Republican when I'm not a guy who's blanket anti-war. I was for the Persian Gulf War. And then we decided to invade Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11. Well, I'm not for really, really stupid wars. And so, and then the Republican Party started doing torture. So I couldn't believe that this party that I thought was for American ideals and why we came to the country had abandoned all of that. So it turns out for the Republicans it was a marketing slogan. And I came to find out for liberals and progressives, they actually mean it. And they want America to live up to that ideal. So that's what I love, and I want everybody to have that same equality of opportunity.
So let's talk, both of you mentioned equality of opportunity. Let's talk about that topic in the context of the 2016 election and the major candidates. Who do you think is going to most effectively bring equal opportunity to the country between the major candidates?
Well, I think we it's a little difficult to answer your question for this reason. With Trump and Hillary, you have an unknown against a known. My fear of Trump is I don't know what he's going to do. My fear of Hillary is I do. So we've got a wild card against somebody who's been in public life all her life and who's basically been, I would say, on the take from day one. These are people who rent out the Lincoln bedroom. They pardon major-level racketeers, drug smugglers, and crooks from money. We've had corruption in local politics. Tammany Hall, the Daily Racket in Chicago. Never before have we had a Secretary of State who figure out, she uses the phrase commercial diplomacy, and she sure has made it work commercially for her. They've got a system in which the Clintons work as a tag team, one of them collecting the down payment through a speech, and then millions and tens of millions of dollars flowing in return for favors being granted on the global scale, collecting money from foreign governments. So we have an unknown quantity against a known crook. And Hillary's talk about equality of opportunity appears to be for her. So there's no real equality of opportunity. Bernie, in my opinion, is naive, but he's at least honest. And so I think some of the appeal of Bernie is that at least here's a guy, he might have been sleeping on his neighbor's couch until last week, but nevertheless, he's not a crook. At least I'm not a crook.
So my sense is, Cenk, you don't disagree with all of that, and you endorsed Bernie in the primary, and you've also been very critical of Hillary. So I'll pose the same question to you, but it's interesting. There is some agreement here on this topic.
There is some agreement, but there's also disagreement. So let me go one by one. We certainly agree that Bernie Sanders is totally honest, and that's why everybody I stopped myself because I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people obviously recognize that and were behind him, and he's not part of the same corrupt system. Hillary and Donald Trump are part of the corrupt system in as counterparts. It's actually a perfect symmetry. Donald Trump brags about how he used to corrupt people, how he would give them, in essence, legalized bribes, and then the Republicans look at that and go, that's awesome. No, that's not awesome.
But can I stop you here and challenge you? I mean, there's a complete difference between a guy who has never run for public office, who is functioning as a businessman within the crony capitalist system of New York, and somebody who's running that system. So in other words, you can't compare Trump and Hillary. Trump is essentially buying favors, Hillary's selling them. Which is worse?
So let me take some time to address all of that, to your question and your point. So I'll start with what you said, Dinesh. So first of all, I have a definitive answer on what's worse. What's worse is the people who set up the corrupt system in the first place. So oftentimes conservatives complain about, big government and they're so crony capitalists. No. The guys who fixed the system were the ones who wanted to purchase the politicians in the first place. So it's not like, oh, golly gee, you made me purchase a politician and I made 24,000% rate of return. Oops. No, they're the ones who corrupted the system in the first place. So it's not like, oh, you twist my arm. Okay, I'll give you 100 and I'll get 1,000 back.
Wait,
that was the whole system, Dinesh. Well, that's why they did it. They put the money in politics, not because it's an accident. It was by design. So yes, Donald Trump is worse because he is the corrupter.
Really? In India, to get ahead, to get a license, to get a passport, to get a ration card, you have to pay bribes. That's the system, right? Now, arguably, the fact that the government pays very little money and the citizens feel that this is the only way to get a ration card, they pay the bribe. So in that sense, they set up the system. But who do we hold accountable? The ordinary guy who can't get sugar from the store, or the guys in government who have been elected and entrusted by the people to look out for their interests? We elected Hillary, not Trump.
No. So let me just say for the record, anybody who watches the Young Turks knows we're no fans of Hillary Clinton or the system. We can't stand it, and we're not in favor of we're not in favor of the establishment. We're not in favor of the corrupt system as we have it now. And I know that a lot of parts of the establishment wants to protect itself. I understand that. But Dinesh, you have to go to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is, and I can trace it exactly to you. In 1971, there was a person who wrote for the Chamber of Commerce. His name was Lewis Powell. He wrote a letter saying, hey, you know what? The Chamber of Commerce can go buy different things. We're not buying enough things. We can go buy education. Let's go and chair different professors at different universities so that we can strike back against liberals. And one of his brilliant ideas was, let's go buy the Supreme Court. Let's give money to politicians so that they will allow us to influence the Supreme Court. You know what Richard Nixon did? It's like, that's a brilliant memo, young kid. Lewis Powell, you're now on the Supreme Court. And then Lewis Powell was the deciding vote in 2 Supreme Court decisions in 1976 and 1978 that said, yes, corporations are human beings. Yes, they have speech rights. Yes, they can spend money to bribe our politicians, which is mental. There's not a, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think a corporation is a human being. Okay, I got 3 hands here. They must be with you, Dinesh. Okay.
Well,
so that is how they bought the system, lock, stock, and barrel. And then you turn around to politicians who are in this systemic corruption, and you go, it's your fault. And then you go, the business guy's buying them. Don't look at them. Don't look at them. They're the problem. They're both the problem, and you're only looking at one side of it.
all right. Number one, I recognize that in a certain Pavlovian sense, to invoke the corporation is not a human being is to bring a certain kind of automatic applause. I recognize that. But
That's because it's true.
no, it's not true. As anyone who goes to law school knows, to say a corporation is a human being is not to say that a corporation has lungs and can breathe and can be murdered in the same sense a human being can, but a corporation is a human being in certain defined legal respects. So, human beings can make a contract in which I hire you, you agree to come work for me. Are you telling me corporations should not be able to make such contracts?
I can tell you exactly what I'm saying. So let me explain. So corporations have 2 different kinds of rights. In the old days, they only had legal rights because they're a legal fiction. We created them. We are their creators. So, and that is how corporations came to be. By the way, the Young Turks is an LLC. It's a corporation. So there's nothing wrong with that. I want corporations to exist. But what the Supreme Court did was it gave them constitutional rights, rights that they have that are inalienable, endowed by their creator. We're their creator. They don't have any inalienable rights. They have no constitutional rights.
All right. So let's look at some constitutional rights. You have an LLC, so do I. My film company, the LLC. Does a corporation, which is to say, remember, a corporation in this case is the 8 guys that make up our corporation, do we have a right of assembly?
Of course, we have a right of assembly.
Do we have a right of
and
speech?
Within
Am I allowed to make a
No.
movie?
No.
No, okay,
You
so-
have a right to freedom of speech.
All right,
okay?
so-
But a robot that we created that is to maximize profit does not have constitutional rights.
Okay. All right. So, you know, this is actually a good test. I'm releasing a movie next month. It's called Hillary's America. Although I'm making the movie, I'm the narrator. It's actually produced by our LLC. What if you and your Young Turks goons show up at the theater and block people from getting in? Is that allowed? Because the corporation has no rights.
No, Dinesh, that's not how it works.
Does a corporation
No,
have free speech rights or not?
Dinesh, they have legal rights. It's not that they have no rights. And if you have legal rights, people can't show up and block entrance for other Americans, actual human beings, to attend a movie they'd like to attend.
Okay. Okay. So the idea of disrupting the movie is only prohibited because he wants to come watch it and he has rights. The actual right to show the movie does not exist, in your opinion.
So he has rights, and he has a right not to be blocked, not to be assaulted. So that's obvious.
And that is the only reason why you wouldn't do it.
No, there's many. I don't. First of all, nobody goes to your movies anyway. So
Oh, really?
why would you?
Oh, yeah.
Who would bother to block it?
Oh, really? Cenk,
Like,
Cenk.
who's going to take out a
Cenk.
Saturday night to go to a movie
Okay.
to block?
How many
If it
people-
was a real movie, we might block.
how many people watch a typical show of the Young Turks?
I'm glad you asked.
Okay. Okay.
So, We have 210 million views a month, 7 million views a day.
Okay, and what is
And
it?
hence-
And hold on, what does it cost? What does it cost to watch your show?
So you can either watch it for free and you get advertising
so you
with it,
get what you
or
pay
you
for.
can become a member at tytnetwork.com/join.
Okay. All right. Let's pivot back to what you were saying earlier about
Hold on.
corruption. Hillary, Trump. Seems to me that you've bashed Hillary. Now you're trying to back off a little bit. Are you saying that Trump, an unknown quantity, is more dangerous than a known crook?
So first of all, Dinesh, you keep calling her a crook, but you just got out of jail.
Why don't, you should, let's give Dinesh a second. Why don't you tell us?
I agree.
So, this is an important point.
I agree.
Give us a second. So,
I
Dinesh,
agree.
Just explain to us what exactly happened with that.
Right. Give me a moment to say what happened. So
He's going to need a moment.
I mentioned earlier I was an immigrant. It's a peculiarity of the immigration process that you leave your country and you kind of walk on this tightrope between two buildings. You leave India, you come to America, and in some point you're in no man's land. You don't belong over here, you don't belong over there. When I landed as a freshman at Dartmouth, I made a small group of friends, about 8 of us, and we became, in a sense, family. We became my surrogate family in the United States. Fast forward 25 years. One member of this group was running for the US Senate in New York. And so she was imploring me in 10 different ways to help her campaign. And I was running around promoting my movie and doing this and speaking. I couldn't do it. So I felt really bad. And so what I did was I told 2 of my friends, give her $10,000 and I will reimburse you. This is not allowed under the campaign finance laws. I exceeded the campaign finance laws. Now, no American in our history has ever gone to prison for doing what I did. Why? Because the campaign finance laws are about corruption. And corruption means you're trying to buy favors. You're telling the candidate, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. I didn't even tell the candidate. She didn't even know I did this for her. And I was doing it to help a friend. So this is a really good example of how Cenk, he knows Hillary is a crook. He knows she buys and sells favors. He knows that the Clintons would sell pardons to people who would give them hundreds of millions of dollars in exchange. There's no comparison between that and my case. But he's using my case to cover for his gal.
Okay. All right. As you might suspect, I love this topic. So I'm not covering for Hillary Clinton at all. I just spent, a year telling you everything that's wrong with Hillary Clinton. And I get to do that because I didn't spend time in jail for corruption. But
I didn't spend time in jail for corruption
but
either.
you did.
No, I didn't.
You did.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No. There is actually a charge called corruption. I wasn't even charged with corruption.
What were you charged with?
I was merely charged with exceeding the campaign finance law.
Yes, breaking the
let me
campaign
ask you
finance
this.
laws.
Let me
By
ask
the
you
way,
this.
which takes a special kind of genius in an era where we've legalized bribery to go to jail for not being able to figure that out.
That's right. And what does that tell you? The fact
You didn't
that
do it very well. That's what it tells
Right.
me.
The fact that I do something unbelievably stupid, right?
Agreed.
And the fact that the Obama administration puts dozens of FBI agents on me, goes through my tax returns, reads all my books, this suggests that this is not a simple matter of this guy did something super dumb. People who do super dumb things without trying to be corrupt don't go into the lockup. You know this. So let me ask you this.
have all these conspiracy theories, but you know who else has a dozen FBI agents pursuing her? Hillary Clinton. So it's not like the Obama team's like, no, not Hillary. They have a dozen FBI agents pursuing her as they pursued you. So where's the bias? There's no bias. That is their nominee.
All right.
You should give them credit. You say right here on the record, President Obama is incredibly fair.
Let me ask you this. Well, if my crimes were proportionate to Hillary, it would be fair.
Look, I don't like that she set up a private server in her house, and I'm worried about that. but you clearly broke the laws. You admit you broke the laws. That's why you went to jail. She never went to jail.
Let me ask you this.
You're the worst person in America to criticize her for being corrupt. I mean, you literally broke the laws regarding corruption.
Cenk, all right.
And you made a whole movie about it. That's
All
what's amazing.
Can you name any person in American history who was given 20 grand over the campaign finance limit and served 1 day in the lockup?
But Dinesh,
Can you?
did it.
Can you?
Did it.
All right.
Did it. So I'm not an expert on the campaign finance crooks of American history.
All right.
I do know one, and he's on the stage with me.
Right. Okay. All right. There's a guy. Let me make you a little more expert on this. There's a guy named Chatwal, Asian Indian guy. We Asian Indians appear to specialize in the campaign finance violation area. In any event, this dude gave 180,000. Let me finish. 180,000 in straw donations to Hillary Clinton and a whole group of Democratic candidates. His case came up the same time as mine. No prison, no confinement. He got a fine. He got community service. Now, here's my point. You keep saying you did it, but anybody who champions justice knows that justice isn't just a matter of did you do it. It's a matter of does the penalty fit the crime? Do other guys who did the same thing get the same penalty? That's the America. You talk about equality. Let's have some equality of opportunity.
Let me just say one last thing about this. So Dinesh, that's exactly what we root for. So if you've got people who are corrupt, that's exactly what I fight against. So I don't just fight against you. I fight against Democrats. I fight against Republicans who are corrupt. If it was up to me, we would make that bribery illegal again. Not just his bribery, but the bribery where you do campaign donations, and I'd put them all in jail. Okay, but when
I
you
didn't
talk
do
about,
bribery. Just to correct you.
Okay, well,
You think I did?
yeah. When you go to pay someone money that they're not supposed to be paid against the law.
What is the definition of bribery?
Okay, so let me finish my point, Dinesh. Look, dude, you spent 8 months in jail. You're still arguing it. You're on probation right now. Is there a probation officer
Bribery
in
means
the room?
in exchange for favors. Have you ever heard of a bribe with nothing in return? Ever heard
So
of such a bribe?
claim there's nothing in return.
The-
You
the-
claim there's
I
nothing
don't
in return.
claim that.
But
The
a
government
court
claimed
decided
that.
that you were guilty and put you in
No,
prison for 8 months.
the government didn't accuse me of any
So
bribery.
to finish my point, before Dinesh went into prison, he said that Mexican immigrants, unlike immigrants who travel for a far distance like he did or I did, were, quote, parasitic. But since then, he has done community service as part of his sentence. And come to find out, oh my God, not all Mexican immigrants are parasitic. So Dinesh, I want to give you credit for that. You've got a nice open mind about us. Tell us about that experience where you began to see that maybe not everyone from a certain race might be parasitic.
Well, as you might imagine, this is the Cenk version of what I said, and you can rely on it being a fast and loose summary of the facts. The truth of it is,
look it up.
Historically, immigrants came to this country when there was no safety net, when there were no benefits to be had. They came out of necessity, they couldn't go back, and they had to make it. In other words, there were ladders of opportunity, but there was no a rope that they could hang on to and have other people pull them up. What makes our situation different today is that we now have a massive welfare state. By the way, a welfare state set up by Americans for Americans. A social contract is among the citizens who are already here. There is no automatic right of someone who is not a citizen to claim benefits that Americans have collectively pooled for themselves. So, my point is America should have a generous immigration policy that attracts immigrants of the first stripe. If an immigrant is coming here to sit in a hammock and get free education, free health care, free this, free that, then stay home.
So just to close the point here,
First stripe? Am I first stripe? I feel good about that, I guess.
So Cenk, as we think about this general election, are you going to be endorsing any of the candidates, or are you going to write in someone, or what's the plan?
No, I never even technically endorsed Bernie Sanders. Everybody knows that I support Bernie Sanders because I support his policies. We're very honest about that. But my job is to analyze the news. So when Bernie Sanders I thought was wrong about gun policy, I talked about that. When I thought he was, for a brief moment, being hypocritical about superdelegates, I challenged them on that when he was on my show. So I will challenge Hillary Clinton throughout the election. I will challenge Donald Trump throughout the election. And I will hear out all of the candidates, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein. I'll hear them all out, and we will cover the news fairly.
Now,
And same question to you, Dinesh. Are you going to support one of the major candidates?
well, I'm going to support the Republican candidate over the Democratic candidate. And I didn't take sides in the primary. But I want to pick up on something Cenk said earlier because it explains my answer. He said earlier that we want an America that doesn't hide from America's dark history. He goes, America has done terrible things to Native Americans, to blacks, slavery, segregation, and so on. And we don't want to conceal this history. I want to invite you to go see the movie next month. Here's why. It actually makes a startling argument. It argues that all these terrible things were in fact done in America, but they were not done by America. If America collectively did all this, it would never have stopped. So obviously some Americans did it, and other Americans stopped them. Hold on, let me finish. Now, the truth of the matter is that the Democratic Party in this country, historically, is the party of slavery, the invention of the positive good school of slavery that purported to show that slavery was good not just for the master, but also for the slave. At the end of slavery, the Democratic Party invented segregation and Jim Crow. It was a Democrat and a delegate to the Democratic Convention who founded the Ku Klux Klan in Tennessee. And for 50 years, the Ku Klux Klan was the domestic terrorist arm of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party also went into eugenics and forced sterilization. In the 1930s, a young JFK went to Nazi Germany. He wrote about Hitler in very positive terms, saying this guy has been misunderstood. People are jealous of him. FDR in the 30s sent people to Italy to study fascism, to recommend ideas to improve the New Deal. Not only did FDR admire Mussolini, Mussolini reviewed FDR's book in an Italian magazine, goes, this guy's one of us. He's a fascist. Now, you don't know a lot of this, which is why you're listening with a kind of bewildered silence. But the reason you don't know it is that you, many of us, me too, we are the victims of a progressive whitewash. And the progressive whitewash, let me finish my sentence. The progressive whitewash is to take all the horrible things that were done and say, America did this, and America did that, or the South did this, or the South did that. No, America didn't do it, you did. So the Democratic Party, having poisoned the wells, is now pretending to show up as the water commissioner.
So let me just quickly ask. This is interesting.
No, I got to answer. Okay. So, Dinesh, this is part of the reason I want to do this, because just like with Ann Coulter last year, I really want to know if you're on the level or not.
All right.
That's what I'm curious about. Because do you not know about the 1964 Civil Rights Act? Do you not know that the Democratic Party, led by Lyndon Johnson at the time, risked losing the South for decades, which they did, to pass the Civil Rights Act, then the Voting Rights Act, and that Nixon proudly took on the Southern strategy, which was now admitted by two different chairs of the RNC to be a racist strategy to get racist whites. And that's why now the Democratic Party, which used to be conservative, and the Republican Party used to be liberal under Abraham Lincoln, have flipped, and the Democratic Party is liberal, and the Republicans are conservative. So, hold on, and I'm not anywhere near done. So you say FDR and Mussolini said some nice things about each other like decades earlier. I don't know if you know this, they later went to war against one another. So
and after
you have
the
a
war,
history of telling only half the story in a preposterous, comical way.
Okay. All right. I think we're getting to the heart of the issue here, so if you don't mind, let's engage a little bit about it, okay?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, let's.
All right.
Let me just add one thing where I think you both agree on, which is the Republican Party used to be the progressive party in America. I don't think that's a secret. I mean, that's...
Well, the Republican Party was the champion of emancipation, anti-segregation, anti-lynching laws, and so on.
Right,
I want to talk about the Civil
So
Rights
you
Act.
liked them when they were progressive?
No, I wouldn't say that's progressive because, no.
I'm pretty sure that's progressive.
No. The progressives of the time were into social engineering, eugenics, forced sterilization. So this is a disguise. The progressives later
And freeing
claimed
the
the mantle.
slaves.
All right,
And freeing the slaves, just as an FYI.
the progressives freed the slaves.
Progressives wanted to free the slaves. They were in the Republican Party. Yes.
No, they were not. The term progressive was invented in the 20th century.
Conservatives liked the way things are. They wanted to keep their tradition and
So
culture
was
of
Abraham Lincoln a
slavery.
Republican?
He was a Republican and a progressive. I know it's hard for
Okay.
you to understand.
Yeah.
The parties switched.
Okay,
That's what he's asking you.
that's-
No one else in the country disputes that other than you.
No, I do dispute it. Let me ask you this question. You mentioned the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Did more Republicans in proportion or more Democrats vote for the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Answer yes, which one? Which party voted in greater proportion for the Civil Rights Act of
Dinesh.
1964?
Great, let's do it.
Which one?
All right.
Do you know?
So I believe that the
believe you
guy
know.
who pushed for the Civil Rights Act was a guy named Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was most clearly a Democrat. And at that point, the Democratic Party had a lot of racist conservatives in it. It's true. What led to the transition was the 1964 Civil Rights Act, where those Democratic racists decided, man, I love the Republican Party. I think I should go there. And for
Really?
you to say at that moment in history, that's the whole point, Dinesh.
Okay.
That's when they switched.
All right,
That's
so-
when all the racists went to your party.
Okay. Yeah. So I take it that this is a backhanded admission that far more Republicans proportionally voted for the Civil Rights Act than Democrats, right? Okay, you admit it. You try to camouflage it, but you admit it. Now, you say that that's when they switched. So let me ask you this. We had the Voting Rights Act in 1965 and the Fair Housing Bill in 1968. Let's take the Fair Housing Bill. Did more Republicans or more Democrats proportionally vote for the Fair Housing Bill? Which one?
So, Dinesh, let me try to, again, let's try this one more time. So, Republicans were more progressive. They were the progressive party, so they would push for things that were progressive until those events in that exact time period, Dinesh. And then a lot of them thought, under Nixon, and he wasn't president yet, and when he ran, he said, hey, I got a great idea. Let's get all those racist Democrats to join the Republican Party. Let's run on racism. And you know what they did? They then went on a campaign through Nixon to bring all the racists in the Republican Party, which I'm not admitting. The head of the Republican National Committee, two different heads of it, came out and gave a speech and said, yes, we transitioned into racist, and that was our strategy.
Really?
You to try to deny that is insanity.
Is it really? Let me
you
ask you
think
this.
the Democrats are more racist now? By the way,
No,
let me
hold on.
let me give you one piece of context. I got to give you context.
I just want to
Dinesh,
show.
you wrote a book saying that slavery wasn't about race in this country. You wrote a book where you said black people should give white people reparations for
didn't say that.
liberating them.
No, I did say that slavery in America did not start out in racial terms. The people tried to enslave the American Indians, lots of blacks owned slaves. So this is part of the real complexity of our history. But I noticed that when we're talking,
Yeah.
you raised...
Racism was a real mixed bag. I remember all those white folks being owned by black people. See, that's exactly what I'm going to.
The black slave owners owned black
deceit
slaves.
on purpose, Dinesh. You do it on purpose. You say, oh, for a while we tried to enslave the Native Americans, so we'll say that slavery wasn't about racism. Do you see how that you're obviously misdirecting people, and you're doing it on purpose? It's not like white people were slaves. The overwhelming majority of slavery was black people enslaved. Why can't you admit the most obvious things? Because you have a political agenda.
No, it's
and
because...
what you want to do is support Republicans and
that's
their
not the
current day racism.
No. I notice that every time I try to pin you down, you try to switch the topic or reframe the vocabulary, okay?
Said the-
Now, hold on. Hold on. You,
Said the guy who earlier in the debate said, now let's pivot.
you mentioned Nixon, right? Nixon's Southern strategy based on open appeals to racism. Let me ask you this. In 1968, who won the Deep South?
So, look, I get it.
You don't
man.
know.
No, I get it. No, his
Oh,
whole
do you know?
His whole shtick is, during the transition, when we were trying to get the racists, we didn't have them all. I win.
Transition, you said it started in 64, and you said Nixon was the epitome of it. Nixon was elected in 68, and I'm asking you who won the Deep South, and you have no idea.
The Democrats owned the Deep South
They
for
owned the Deep
decades
South.
and decades.
Okay.
They lost the South because Nixon began that campaign of the Southern strategy, and Pat Buchanan on MSNBC admitted to me, yes, we ran it for 40 years, and we had a good ride. So, like, for you to take the point where they started and go, they weren't completely and utterly racist yet because their mission had not yet been accomplished, is not a winning argument.
So I'm a little confused. I just need to ask something. So you're basically arguing that a lot of Republicans, as well as some Democrats, supported the Civil Rights Act and then the Voting Rights Act. So was that a good thing or a bad thing for them to do? Like, do you
No, I'm
endorse the
saying
Civil
it's
Rights
a
Act?
very good thing. What I'm getting at is this. Progressive historiography has claimed for the left and for the Democratic Party credit for a civil rights movement in the 60s that was actually done largely by the Republican Party. If the Democratic Party had been the only party in America, none of these laws would have passed. Now, you don't find that in your textbooks. You don't find your professors telling you this. You won't hear about this on the Young Turks. Why? Because they're now doing cover-up for the progressives.
It is purposely misleading. That's why you
Purposely
don't say it, because it's purposely misleading. Is the grass green? Oh, sometimes it's yellow. Gotcha. All right, so do you think that black people should give white people reparations?
No.
Okay, how about that? What you wrote in your book about, hey,
didn't-
they should be so happy about being liberated, they should give white people money.
That's
You
not
wrote
what I
that.
said. That's not what I said. Let me tell you what I did say. And this is why, actually, we're having a debate with politics and entertainment, but we can't get to these issues if we don't frame the other person's argument fairly. In my movies, in the America film, I brought on leading leftists, Michael Eric Dyson and others, and I let them make their case. And later, after the movie, I saw him. I go, Michael, did I portray you fairly in the movie? And he goes, you're not Michael Moore. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So I'm trying to frame the argument of the left the way they would put it. But you're not doing that. You're basically picking a line here. You don't even have a quote. But you're just throwing it out there, relying on your guys to go wild. And that's not really a debate.
Dinesh, if I did that behind your back, you might have a point. You're right here. You have a mic. I asked you a question. Answer it.
I'll answer it. So,
Okay.
so my argument was, and this is an argument that was basically made by not just by Booker T. Washington, many others. They basically argued that slavery was a transmission belt. Slavery was evil, and it was terrible for the slaves. But they asked, what about the descendants of slaves who were subsequently born in America as opposed to being born, let's say, in Africa? Muhammad Ali, when he came back from the rumble in the jungle in Zaire, was asked by a reporter, hey, champ, what did you think of Africa? And he goes, thank God my granddaddy got on that boat. Now, this is Ali being very politically incorrect, but I think making a point that is worth considering. And that is to say that there is great value. We immigrants go through great difficulties to come into the orbit of Western freedom. So this is the complexity of the point I was making, that the slaves in America were worse off, but their descendants born in the orbit of American freedom in a land of opportunity are in fact better off.
So there's another point I want to get to here, which is, Dinesh, you have a movie that you put out, I think, in 20...
I'm glad you put that in context, by the way. I'm sure the slaves were so thankful. You made a cogent point there.
I said that
Congratulations, you've been put in the orbit of freedom, ironically, through slavery. Hundreds of years of slavery. That is a curious orbit of freedom.
Cenk.
Don't worry, though. Your great-grandkids one day might be free after I whip you, I own you, I kill you, I separate your family, I rape your wife. After all that, your great-grandkids might be in the orbit of freedom. Why, thank you so much.
So I just finished saying that slavery was a terrible moral crime, and we have to distinguish the slaves from their descendants. That's what I did say. You weren't listening because you've trained your ear to jump before you think.
Hey, you guys want to do a poll of African Americans in this country and ask them if they should thank white people for slavery? How do you think that poll comes out, Dinesh?
I don't think anyone has ever said that.
Okay, but no, today they are the descendants who have been brought into the orbit of freedom. So according to your logic, they should be incredibly thankful. Let's do a poll. Let's find out.
Hold on a
second. Do you really believe these things, Dinesh?
Cenk.
Or are you trying to get paid by right-wing guys who are paying you to say this nonsense?
Cenk, there are penniless Irish driven out by the potato famine who came starving to America. Their lives were actually, in many senses, worse. But their descendants, born here now in America, obviously enjoy freedoms that their ancestors didn't have. So I don't understand why you are, I don't know if you're being vile or being stupid, but it looks to me like it's some bizarre combination of the two. You refuse to try to understand what I'm saying.
No, I think I got it.
You got it.
Yes.
I think you got it. At least to the degree you can.
Let me ask you about another book you wrote where you said that 9/11 was because of Planned Parenthood, Nancy Pelosi, and Brokeback Mountain.
Really? Really? That's what I said.
Yes.
Maybe
and that
you
it
can
was.
clarify.
Go ahead, clarify. That's what you have a mic for.
Sure.
Go for it, big guy.
Yeah.
How about it, Hoss?
So in my book, The Enemy at Home, I raised the question of when you look at the propaganda of the radical Muslims, what are the themes that they emphasize to recruit on the Arab street? And I said, you see foreign policy in there, you see Palestine, you see Saudi Arabia, but many of these guys aren't in Palestine or Saudi Arabia. They're in Pakistan, they're in Egypt. So what attracts them to the radical Muslim cause? I said, this whole notion of America as the great Satan is an attempt to capitalize on the values of Hollywood that are projected abroad. Now, here we have to realize we're not just talking about radical Muslims. Throughout Asia today, there's a slogan that's gathering currency. It's called modernization yes, westernization no. And this is traditional people all over the world who want Western technology, and they want constitutional rights, and they want democracy, but they don't like what they see as some of the more shameless aspects of Western culture shoved down their throats. This is a real issue worldwide. Look at the recent case in Orlando. If anyone thinks that there's no merit to this, just read the book. He doesn't read books. What he does, he makes these one-sentence summaries.
I don't read his books. There's a big difference.
That's right. You don't read them, but you talk about them. You don't read them, but you talk about them because someone gave you the one-sentence summary.
All right. Have you watched every one of my shows?
No.
How dare you? Don't talk about anything I say.
All right, let's move on to...
I haven't talked about your shows.
All right, by the way, you just said, yeah, liberals caused 9/11. That's your argument, right?
I said that not the real not actual American culture, but the projection of American culture abroad is giving aid and comfort to the radical Muslims who are using it as an effective recruiting tool. I did say that.
So when you mentioned Brokeback Mountain, that was just a coincidence that movie happened to be about homosexuality?
No, I'm actually saying that the trumpeting of values like homosexuality, feminism, in third world cultures becomes a way of people saying, we don't want that. We don't want that over here. You join me to fight against the great Satan.
So Pat Robertson says homosexuals caused 9/11, and you say the spreading of homosexual culture caused 9/11. That is very sophisticated. I missed that nuance. By the way, the oldest trick in the book for people who write obnoxious, horrible books is if a decent person doesn't read them, well, you didn't read them, okay? It's the oldest trick in the book. Yeah, I saw the trailers for your movies. They're preposterous. I saw I read the introductions and the summaries of your books that are what an enormous waste of time, because the whole thing is to mislead everybody. That is the whole point of the book. So for example, you talk about Obama's rage. So that's if you don't know, that's a classic racist trope, the angry black man. So he wrote a book about it, and one of his supporters yells out, "It's true," right? And so, again, Dinesh, do you know that that's a racist trope, or is that like a newsflash to you that throughout history in America that they have used the idea of the angry black man to keep blacks down, and you just happen to be talking about Obama's rage from the guy who's like you could say a lot of bad things about Obama, and I have, but rage? Really?
Let me
the
just give
only
a little
way you
more
would say
context
that
about the same.
is if you wanted to say, angry black man, hey, whites, will you buy my book? Will you buy my book, white racist?
So let me add some context to. So you released a movie in 2012 about Obama's America, and you made some prognostications about 2016. So I think this is interesting. We're in 2016. Maybe you could do a self-inventory of which predictions came true, and be honest. I mean, no one can predict the future, so it's totally fine if you didn't get everything right, and then we'll have you respond.
Yeah. So the trope of black rage is something that is within American culture. The idea it came out of the Malcolm X talk, for example, about the good Negro and the bad Negro. There's a whole history here. I've written a 2,000-page book about this. My argument about Obama is different.
Even they didn't clap.
My argument about Obama is a little different. My argument was that if you actually read Obama's book, he is less a figure of the civil rights movement of America than of the great anti-colonialist struggle of the Third World. Now, there's recent literature on Obama by people in the Obama White House that confirm this notion that Obama almost learned from a young age, not just from Hawaii, but Indonesia, his trips to Kenya, to look at America from the outside in. I think in this way he's even different than Hillary. Now, you can judge Obama for yourself and see if this is a correct angle. I might be wrong about it, but when you have a guy who's the President of the United States, you can't immunize criticism of him. It's not the same thing as me talking about a bunch of kids in the inner city. I'm talking about the President, and if you say, you can't say he's angry because you're appealing to the ancient trope of black rage, we would not be able to have free criticism of our leaders because they would just constantly be blocking it on this and blocking it on that. So I challenge you to cite a single line or paragraph I have ever written about Obama that is racist in any way. No one has even alleged that. And so what we're getting here, well, he's alleging it. And I think
the name of the book is Obama's Rage. Okay, yes, that's my quote. Yes, you do.
I think that settles his case.
It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that I happen to pick a theme that is the identical of a racist trope for hundreds of years in America. Golly gee, did I do that? And did my white racist donors, were they super happy about it? What a wild coincidence.
So wait, you didn't answer the question about the predictions.
So in the movie, the beauty of a movie is that you can watch it now. It came out in 2012, and you can check. I made specific predictions in the movie. I said that Obama will double the national debt. I said that he would undermine our allies and strengthen our enemies. I said that he would slash the defense budget, slash our nuclear arsenal, and allow other countries hostile to us to develop nuclear weapons. Now, I'm not gloating here because I'm actually very unhappy that these things have come true. I see American allies one by one drop in the Middle East. Mubarak was our ally. Obama pulled the rug out from under him. Gaddafi was not our ally, but he was behaving himself in the wake of the Iraq War. He was giving us intelligence on terrorism. This is Hillary's line on Gaddafi. We went there, we saw, he died. In other words, we knock out a guy who's working with us. Meanwhile, Assad in Syria is still in power. The mullahs in Iran are even stronger. So it is a matter of clinical classification to see if these predictions are true or false. You can make up your own mind, but if you get a summary from this guy, you can be pretty sure that it's a cartoon version of what I did.
So, we have we have yet another case of a classic Dinesh D'Souza attempt to mislead you. So he'll say things like, oh, well, the debt has increased. Okay, that's true. Okay, and he goes, yeah, I win. Okay, no, let's look at context. George Bush, who was given a $5 trillion surplus by Bill Clinton, then handed off a $1.5 trillion deficit, which Obama, throughout the years, cut in half. But they don't tell you that. They don't say, hey, my God sucks at balancing the budget.
Hold on.
He put that in Obama's lap, and then, oh my God, Obama, look at his deficits. Given to you by George W. Bush.
No. I notice a very cunning slide from the concept of the debt, which is an aggregate of our obligations, to the deficit, which is an annual total. Very
the
cunning.
deficit
But
leads to the debt.
yes, it does. So let me ask you this.
And you guys created that deficit,
Really?
which led to that debt.
All right. What were the average deficits in the 8 Bush years?
Okay, so this is another classic trick that
What
people
were
do.
they?
Okay.
Do you know?
So this is yeah, I do. Oh, hold on.
All right.
So
tell us.
So I just told you the exact number that George Bush handed off to Barack Obama. But what they'll do is and I used to do this in college. You'll study specific facts and then put them in there, and they go, wow, look at that. So he memorized the 8 years. And then he'll go and turn around to seem smart. Do you know the exact number for those 8 years of the deficit? I just told you exactly where he started and where he ended up.
No.
The fact that you know, but in 2007 it wasn't as large as it is in 2008 is irrelevant. It is done as a debating tactic.
Okay.
The point is he was given a $5 trillion surplus and he exited with a $1.5 trillion deficit. That is because he sucks at balancing the budget, and then you want to blame Obama for it. That is your attempt to mislead.
All right. Let me give you a couple of concrete facts. We're in a public domain, so they can easily be checked. And then if you can disagree with me, do so. The average, hold on. The average Bush deficits. See, this is what happens. This is what happens when facts come into the picture. Hold on. The national debt was approximately $8.5 trillion when Obama took office in early 2009. Look it up. It was about $8.5 trillion. It is now well over $17 trillion. Obama has doubled the national debt. Now,
I keep explaining to him.
true or false?
So, see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So he goes, I have a fact, and I'm going to state that fact, but I'm not going to give you any context. And most of my readers are Republicans, so they're kind of stupid, and they'll buy into it. So I'll just give it with no context. And then, as I've now done 3 times, I give him the context as to why that happened. And he goes, oh, context, nuance, so damaging, so troubling. Republicans, remember, he doubled the debt. Where did it come from? Dinesh, where does a debt come from? True or false, does it come from deficits?
Yes, it does. And Obama has had trillion-dollar deficits one after the other.
Did George Bush, facts, let's talk facts. Did George Bush hand off a $1.5 trillion deficit to President Obama?
True.
Did he bring that down to under half of that deficit at this point?
On this annual basis, yes, but over 8 years.
Yes. There we have it. Facts. Facts.
Cenk, we had.
But what about the debt?
No. Obama has added $8.5 trillion to the national debt in 8 years. His average deficit is $1 trillion. Now, you talked about Republican deficits that made you a liberal. In the Reagan years, people talked about $200 billion deficits as far as the eye can see. George W. Bush, never had a deficit exceeding $500 billion.
That's because he was handed a $5 trillion surplus. Context, facts. You attempt to mislead, I clarify. We can do this all night long.
All right. Let me just.
Okay.
By the way, let's have fun. Who's the last Republican president to balance the budget when he left office? Because Republicans are good at that, right? Who's the last president?
Reagan.
Wrong. Eisenhower.
Wrong.
Look it up. Look it up. You think Reagan left office with a balanced budget?
Hold on.
Is that what you're saying?
Hold on.
Okay, now context.
No, I agree. Reagan had modest deficits, but under Reaganism, 2 things were happening. One was a massive peace dividend from the end of the Cold War. You talk about the Clinton surplus.
So you're giving excuses.
I'm talking about the Clinton surplus being the product of the technological revolution and the end of the Cold War.
So
What do you
let's
think
review
it
the
was?
facts. Let's review the facts. The only ones who have balanced the budget in our lifetimes are Democrats. The Republicans have a lot of excuses. Oh, golly gee, we had this and the thing. And by the way, you were wrong. See, I can do this too. I know a fact he doesn't know. It was Eisenhower. Okay, that's a cute little debating trick. Okay, who's the last Republican president to balance the budget in any given year rather than the end of their administration? Oh, you don't know it, I win.
Well.
See, it's a debating trick. It's a debating trick.
No, because,
it's Nixon.
Because
Congratulations,
hold on,
that's
your
what-
fact, look, we're talking about facts with significance, right? We're not talking about, we're talking about facts that have meaning, So, let me ask you this. In Obama's term, did the national debt double, yes or no?
I can't believe we're back to this. Okay.
I think we should put
How
the
many
tricks
times
away.
do I have
Let's
to
put the
explain it?
tricks
But that's
away.
the thing with the Republicans.
All right.
You got to explain it and explain it. You see,
In
debts
short,
come from
yes.
deficits.
Yes.
Deficits were given. Okay, all right.
All right,
I thought I
so-
did it 4 times.
So there's an issue that we've talked about that both of you think is important. That's the issue of crony capitalism. What do you think are some reforms that we can enact to make the government less corrupt?
Crony capitalism, I think, is the result of the fact that the federal government has not only enormous power over the private economy that it shouldn't have, and therefore, when it comes to simple things like getting a permit, building a bridge, there's a guy who's making a modest salary who makes that decision. So people come around, various people who want to get that contract, and they make deals with him, right? This is the deep corruption of our process. The founders had actually a very good solution to it, and that was reduce the power of the federal government to control so much of the economy, to control oil drilling and education and healthcare, and that's going to make it less possible for corrupt people who are in politics to be so corrupt, and it's going to reduce the incentive of people in the private sector who should be competing with each other to compete with politicians like Hillary to put money in their back pocket.
Okay, I love this. So let's break this down. So first of all, Republicans have a talking point. We're against big government. Okay, great. You're against the giant military, the largest government program we have? No. I love that big government. Okay, great. You're against intruding on a woman's right to choose and getting between her and her doctor. No. I love that big government. No, I love that big government. I love a government so big it's in your ovum. Okay. So why do they do it? So here's the interesting part. Why do they do it? So it isn't because they're concerned about big government. It's because they want lower taxes and less regulation. So that way they can save money. They can save money if they have less safety features in their mine, but your family might die in a mine accident. But they saved a couple of bucks with a talking point about smaller government. And look, any tiniest little change in the tax code gets the rich billions of dollars. Why do you think they do the crony capitalism in the first place? Why do you think they send Dinesh out with his talking points? So that he can
Cenk,
convince
no
people,
one's sending me out.
let's go smaller government, by which I mean less taxes for me and less regulation so I can take more risks and do more pollution.
Notice the question was about controlling corruption in the political process, i.e. buying politicians. He didn't have anything to say about that, so he switches and starts talking about mining accidents,
Great.
which are not the subject under discussion.
Great, let's do it. Thank you. So, now you want a real answer. So I'm telling you what the problem is, and I'm telling you how they're trying to mislead you to get the rich even more benefits. By the way, you want to talk about welfare queens. The capital gains tax leads to, there's no reason why it should be lower than the tax that you guys pay. But if you're in the highest bracket, you now pay around 39%. If you have capital gains, you only pay 20%. And they go, that's for everybody. No, it's not. It's actually only 47% of Americans have money in the stock market. That is, it goes to, ironically, the 47% who are welfare queens. And of that, only the 5% gain 2/3 of all the gains from capital gains. You know what that costs us? $51 billion a year. So they are the welfare queens, and now let me explain to you how we're going to stop them. So the way that you stop the legalized bribery and the corruption is you say, hey, the money you are using for that bribery, you cannot give to politicians anymore. You cannot give into the political space anymore. So I'm going to unlegalize bribery. So what you do is you get money out of politics. And I've created an entire organization for this.
All right,
So
let me reply.
Wolf, by the way, you asked if I'm doing anything about it. It's called wolf-pac.com. Go sign up right now. Get money out of politics and end the corruption. You agree with me, right, brother?
Look, so
Watch.
I think...
By the way, this is great, because this is the guy who got arrested for putting more money into politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you agree, Dinesh, that there is some corruption and bribery in the campaign finance system?
I totally do. And I think that the campaign finance laws exist to get people who are buying favors. Now, people are buying favors all across the political process. And the queen of this is actually Hillary. Now, let's say we pass Cenk's law. You can't bribe politicians by giving them money. Now, the Hillary setup is far too cunning for a guy like this. Hillary's setup is, if you want a deal, don't talk to me, talk to Bill. Bill will come and give a speech for 20 minutes. You pay him $750,000, more than double his normal speaking fee. That's your down payment. Then, without me ever talking to you, I will do what you want. Then you give the Clinton Foundation $33 million. This is what's going on. And this is the politician that he's covering for, while pretending to be the champion of stopping the corruption of the process.
See, he says that, but you didn't watch my shows, did you? I don't cover for that. In fact, I cover that all the time.
Well, you're covering for it tonight.
No, I was in the middle of saying about how corrupt the Clinton Foundation is when you interrupted me.
Okay,
so
let me ask you this.
That's exactly my point, guys. So it is. What he's talking about is right. They do. That's why the Bernie Sanders campaign said, you think that Goldman Sachs is paying Hillary Clinton $225,000 for their health? No, they're looking to corrupt her. They did that 3 times, $675,000. Millions upon millions going to Hillary Clinton, going to Bill Clinton. Okay, so my point, but Dinesh, yes, they can do that, Dinesh, but if Wolfpack wins and we get that constitutional amendment, you're going to have public financing that says, yes, Hillary Clinton, you can have that corruption, but we are going to have an even debate. So you will have X amount of money, and your Republican counterpart will have X amount of money, and we will hear you both out without one of you buying a larger mic.
Right, so this is exactly what Hillary says. I call it the stop me before I steal again principle. Hillary says, I would like to be honest, but we are in a dishonest process. And therefore, my dishonesty is simply playing along with the system as it exists now. And so therefore, to propose some hypothetical future rule when we are dealing with the queen of corruption right now, the question I want Cenk to answer, and let's watch him duck this one, can any progressive in America in good conscience vote for the queen of corruption, Hillary Clinton?
Okay. So first of all, here we go with loaded questions. So will you vote for the queen of corruption? I can't tell if that question's loaded. When did you stop beating your wife? That's one of those questions. Although, if you go into your divorce records, all right.
So she's not the queen of corruption. This is what I mean by covering for her. She's not the queen of corruption.
No. So I'm going to tell you, look, when you get the general election day, and I get a ton of criticism from Democrats for this, general election day is the least relevant day. Primaries are more important. Fixing the system is more important. Getting a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics is more important. But when you give me a person who I think is systemically corrupt and a monster who is racist, bigoted, and has no earthly idea what the economy is about and might crash the entire global economy, and then if I vote for the person who's systemically corrupt, and you go, ha-ha, I got you. No, you didn't get me. You nominated a monster. It's your fault, not my fault.
Let me, we're coming to the close of our time here, so I've one last question.
Can I just get him on the record in the same way, but without it being loaded? Are you for getting money out of politics?
I would like to see politics. Look, to me, the problem with
I can see where this is going, but let it
Quick
finish.
answer.
look,
Quick answer.
getting money out of politics, I think, is a stupid phrase. Here's why. Hold on.
Because he
Hold
likes
on.
money in politics.
Hold on a second. No. That's not the reason. People can get involved in politics in different ways. Let's take two guys. One guy who's got a normal job, he works, let's say, 50 hours a week. Another guy who's not working. And they both support opposite candidates. One supports the Republican, one supports the Democrat. Now, the guy who's not working goes, I'll volunteer for 8 hours and will work for my candidate. The guy who has a job goes, I'm going to give 5% of my salary to the candidate I support because I'm working all day. I can't go knock door to doors, but I'm using my money, which is my stored labor, and I'm putting it behind the guy I believe in. Cenk goes, the second guy who's using his money is a corrupt crook. We got to get him out of politics and leave the unemployed guy who's got all the free time. To me, that's not democracy. That's not democracy.
So that's a way of saying liberals are bums who don't work.
No,
That's
no,
a way.
I
And
didn't-
then
I
secondly
wasn't going
saying,
there.
oh, it's just a plumber giving 5% of his salary. He's working really hard. Ignore the Koch brothers putting $900 million into this campaign.
So let me just pivot to the last part here, and I'm glad both of you.
Look, you say the Koch brothers, I say Soros. We know about all this.
I'll get them both out. Let's get them both out.
So I think there is a shared. I'm glad both of you agree that we do need reforms in our campaign finance system and that the process is currently corrupt. So we agree on that. Let me ask one final question because we have a lot of young people here in the audience. And, you know, when I read about some of your movies and things, it seems like a totally, like, we're about to lose our country if we elect certain people. And also, similarly, Cenk, you talk about how we can't trust a lot of people in politics and it's very corrupt, and we both agree on that. Here's the final question. Why should, you know, and you mentioned the founders. You know, the founders talked about a lot in the Federalist Papers that we need the participation of the American people in order for a democracy to thrive. So, given that context, why should all the young people here be interested in politics and should be engaging more actively instead of believing that the whole system doesn't work and we shouldn't have anything to do with it?
Do you mind going first?
Oh, no, sure, no problem. So the founding fathers were geniuses, and they were also revolutionaries. So sometimes Dinesh talks about revolution. Obviously, he's got a very different idea than I do about it, and that's okay. That's what we want to get back to. We want to get back to a real debate in the country, right? Not corrupted by all the money. So Dinesh and I can have all the debates in the world, but then the Koch brothers can come in and put in $900 million, or Soros, or Bloomberg, and they can just simply buy. They might not be able to buy the presidency because there's so much free media, but they could buy a Montana Senate seat without blinking. So let's get back to real debates. And so how do you engage young people and give them hope? Well, that's why I brought up the founding fathers. Since they were revolutionaries, they built revolution into the Constitution. Not a violent one. They had to resort to muskets to get rid of tyranny. But they said, hey, you should do a revolution against this document that we wrote. You should all amend it from time to time, because there's no way we could have gotten it all right. I'll even give you two different ways to amend it. You could amend it through Congress, or you could amend it through the states. Now, Wolfpack thinks that Congress is fundamentally corrupt, so we're going to amend it. Conservatives should love this, and by the way, a lot of them do. Some of the most conservative people in the country, Wolfpack is nonpartisan, do love this. And they go, yes, let's go to the states, and young people, this is not pie in the sky, this is not horse race, this is real systemic change. And the beauty of it is we can all do it together, and we can even get liberals and conservatives to do it together. Let's do that revolution. That's exactly what the Founding Fathers wanted us to do.
When someone talks about who is a conservative in America today, a conservative is someone who conserves. But conserves what? Cenk says who conserves slavery. No. A conservative is someone who conserves the ideals of the American founding. That's what we conserve. Now, what is the main choice that young people face? I'd like to give you my own immigrant take on this. As I mentioned earlier, a society is not judged by how it treats the rich guy or the guy at the top. It's judged by what kind of life it makes possible for the guy at the bottom who's trying to come up. And it seems to me that in this, there are really two options. One party looks at America as a ladder of opportunity. Now, the government does have a role to hold the ladder, and that means to protect rights, property rights, rights of contract, and so on, patents, etc. And so your job then is to climb up the ladder. It's up to you. How far you get, it's partly a function of luck, and it's partly a function of how you do. But there's another approach in America, and that is, I call it the approach of the rope. And this is a group of guys who are sitting on top of a building. They don't really believe in ladders. Their point is that ladders are illusory. They say, we're going to let down a rope. And we're asking you, little guy, to hang on to the rope, and we will pull you up. Now, on the face of it, that's more appealing, because you don't have to climb, you just got to hang on. But you have to remember that the rope is very precarious. You're at the mercy of the guy holding the rope. If he decides to let you go, down you go. And second, you will never have that satisfaction of earned achievement of knowing that you did it, because you didn't do it, someone else did it for you. So the real difference, it seems to me, is over whether we as young people, as Americans, do we want the ladder of opportunity, or do we want the rope that I think all too tragically has for many people become a noose? Thank you very much.
So let me just say, first of all, I think we've had a great debate, and I just want to say thank you to Cenk, thank you to Dinesh. I think we've had a great discussion here. And since we were talking about the Founding Fathers, and because we have so many young people, the only thing I want to say is that we should not be disillusioned from this whole system, because all the corruption that we're talking about only reinforces itself if we do not participate. And for all of us who see the Founding Fathers as marble statues, here's one last fact I want to leave you with, and that is the majority of the Founding Fathers in 1776 were under the age of 40. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. James Madison didn't write the Constitution when he was 70 years old. He wrote it when he was 36. He was elected to the Continental Congress when he was 29. So the spirit of our country has been renewal, especially from young people, and that's why we need to involve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're next, and thank you.